Welcome to this explainer. Okay, think about that blue recycling bin you haul out to the curb every single week. The pitch for owning the business that picks it up is incredibly seductive, isn't it? I mean, society generates mountains of waste every single day. The idea is you set up a facility, take in materials people are literally throwing away for free, and then sell them to manufacturers who desperately need them. It's like raw material raining down on you daily. How could you possibly lose? Well, as we're going to discover today, the reality is a whole lot dirtier. We are breaking down a massive $14 billion US industry where margins are notoriously thin, and honestly, a single bad quarter can force a seemingly healthy company straight into bankruptcy. We're going to pull back the curtain and look at the real economics of the waste business.
So, here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the seductive pitch versus reality. 2, the true revenue engines. 3, logistics and yield. 4, capital and commodities. 5, material economics. And finally, number 6, the rules for survival.
All right, section 1, seductive pitch versus brutal reality. Let's dive right in by fundamentally changing your mental model of what a recycling operation actually is. Because, believe me, almost nothing about the economics here is obvious from the outside.
When most people picture a recycling company, they picture this one single fluid process. But there are actually very different types of businesses at play here. We really need to contrast the collector against the processor. A collection business, that's essentially just a highly complex logistics operation. You drive around, you pick material up. But a processing facility acts much more like a light manufacturing plant. It requires heavy machinery to sort and compress materials, and a completely different set of operational expertise. Basically, the closer you get to turning raw waste into something a factory can actually use immediately, the more millions in capital you need and the more things that can instantly go wrong.
Moving on to section 2, the true revenue engines. Let's look at how these businesses actually survive day to day.
Now, there is a crucial difference here that shatters the absolute biggest misconception in the entire industry. This idea that you only make money by selling recovered commodities like cardboard or aluminum. The reality, charging a gate fee or tipping fee just to accept material at your facility is a fundamentally safer business model. Think about it. Getting paid $50 to $70 per ton just as material crosses your threshold means a massive chunk of your operating cost is covered before you've processed a single pound. Compare that to the alternative, paying out of your own pocket to collect trash and just passively hoping global commodity prices stay high enough to cover your overhead. Getting paid for the input matters infinitely more to your survival than getting a high price for the output.
Which brings us to section 3, logistics and yield, or as they should be called, the silent killers. Let's get into the operational weeds where your cash simply vanishes before you ever sell a single aluminum can.
$2.34 per mile. According to the American Transportation Research Institute, that was the highest commercial transportation cost ever recorded, hitting in 2025. That number alone proves that just moving material from point A to point B is typically your single largest operating expense. That massive cost covers fuel, driver wages, insurance, and the depreciation of the truck itself. And here's the real kicker. When a collection truck finishes its route and drops off its load, it has to drive all the way back empty. That return trip costs you just as much per mile, and you aren't making a single dime on it.
Let's walk through an example that brilliantly illustrates why this matters so much. Imagine two operators, both handling 100 tons a day. Operator A has tight route density. They operate within just a 10 to 12 mile radius, drive 180 miles, and spend $400 a day. Operator B, on the other hand, is spread out over a 65-mile radius, driving 900 miles and burning through over $2,000 a day. On transportation alone, Operator B is spending $16 more per ton. Think about that for a second. In an industry where profit margins often hover around just $15 to $40 per ton, a lack of route density quietly wipes out your entire margin before you even begin processing.
And then there's yield, the other silent killer. If you run a typical single-stream recycling operation, a highly realistic yield is about 75%. That means for every 100 tons that come through your gate, 25 tons are sheer contamination. We're talking about that unrinsed peanut butter jar, that greasy pizza box you thought you were recycling, just all sorts of unrecyclable junk. When that happens, you suffer a brutal double penalty. First, you lose 25% of your sellable volume right off the top. Second, you literally have to load that garbage back onto a truck and pay out-of-pocket landfill tipping fees to dump it. Your effective revenue per ton plummets instantly.
All right, section 4, capital and the commodity price trap. We need to talk about the macro risks and the massive capital expenditures required to actually process all this material at scale. When prices go down, your equipment debt does not shrink, only your revenue falls. That quote perfectly captures a truly terrifying commodity trap. You see, most recovered materials trade as global commodities. If the price of cardboard swings from $150 a ton down to basically nothing, well, your costs don't change. Your fixed costs for facility leases, truck payments, and staff wages remain stubbornly, painfully high. You can't just stop processing because prices are bad. Your debt keeps accruing whether material is moving or not. It's an agonizing squeeze on your cash flow.
We can see the ultimate historical example of this exact commodity risk with China's 2018 National Sword Policy. For decades, China was the largest buyer of American recyclables. Then, quite literally overnight, a policy decision made thousands of miles away in Beijing banned imports of mixed plastics and paper. Boom! Recycling revenue dropped by 50% for many U.S. operations in the blink of an eye. Profitable American operators suddenly found themselves paying to get rid of the very materials they used to sell. It's a risk baked deep into the business model that you just can't engineer your way out of entirely.
And the reason you can't just pause operations when those macro shocks hit, it all comes down to the sheer cost of your infrastructure. $20 to $30 million. That staggering figure is what it costs to build a fully equipped, modern material recovery facility capable of handling 100 tons a day. We are talking about some highly specialized gear here. Horizontal balers, magnetic separators, and near-infrared optical scanners that identify and eject plastics at superhuman speeds. That kind of advanced light manufacturing requires massive upfront debt.
So, building off that massive capital cost, you can see how fixed costs absolutely plummet with raw volume. If you only process 10,000 tons annually, your fixed overhead might cost you $65 per ton. But if you can scale that throughput up to 25,000 tons using the exact same facility and equipment, your fixed cost drops to just $26 per ton. Volume dictates survival. A facility running at 40% capacity is carrying 100% of its fixed costs across a fraction of the material. And honestly, that makes the economics turn incredibly ugly incredibly fast.
Section 5, Material Economics and Hidden Risks. Because the underlying truth we really must face next is that not all trash is created equal.
If we were to build a hierarchy of value among these materials, aluminum is absolutely the gold standard. Why? Well, because recycling it saves manufacturers 95% in energy costs compared to mining raw bauxite ore. That gives it a massive price premium in the market. Cardboard? It holds medium value, but because of e-commerce, it offers such reliable, dense volume that it really acts as the economic backbone of the whole industry. But then there's glass. Glass is practically a net negative cost. It's incredibly heavy, which drives up those transportation costs we talked about earlier. And worse, it breaks into tiny shards that contaminate other streams and destroy your very expensive processing equipment.
And beyond the literal materials themselves, you have to survive an absolute gauntlet of structural risks. Equipment breakdowns? They don't just pause your revenue, they push cash-tight operations straight toward insolvency, while fixed costs keep ticking away. Then you've got this massive cash flow timing mismatch. You're paying your truck drivers weekly, you're paying your facility lease monthly, but your buyers? They might not pay you for 60 to 90 days. On top of that, there are catastrophic environmental liabilities. A single tiny lithium-ion battery casually tossed into a recycling bin can literally spark a fire that burns down a $30 million facility in a single afternoon. No joke.
Okay, final section. Section 6, the blueprint for survival. We've seen all the pitfalls, so let's see how this all builds into the operational playbook used by the companies that actually thrive.
These 5 rules completely dismantle that naive green dream myth. The very best operators, they secure long-term supply contracts before buying a single piece of expensive equipment. They fiercely concentrate their collection routes to minimize transportation costs. They know exactly who is buying their material before they even process it. They obsessively track yield, and they will absolutely financially penalize suppliers for contamination. And most importantly, they diversify revenue with gate fees to cushion against those wild commodity crashes. Successful operators don't act like environmentalists. They act like ruthless, hyper-efficient regional logistics and manufacturing executives.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. If the surface-level story of waste raining down like free money is a total myth, and the reality is actually a brutal battle of route density, fixed costs, and commodity cycles, where does the true leverage lie for a new player? If you don't have $30 million sitting around to build a massive facility, what specific, difficult